Airline humiliates black pilot in front of passengers. Her response ended flights for days. She trained for years, earned her wings, and passed every test. Yet on the day she stepped into that airport, they laughed, humiliated her, and refused to believe she was the pilot. What happened next? Let's just say the airline didn't see it coming. Stick around, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. This story will leave you speechless. Captain Ariel Monroe stood tall and proud as she walked through the bustling halls of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the busiest airport in the world. The terminal was alive with motion passengers wheeling suitcases, children giggling, announcements echoing through the speakers. Dressed sharply in her navy blue captain's uniform with golden stripes shining on her sleeves, Ariel carried herself like someone who knew the sky was her second home. But as she approached the GoldJet Airlines gate for Flight 382 to Denver, she felt something different in the air. Attention. She had been here 100 times before, reporting for duty like clockwork. Yet today would be the day that changed everything. She approached the counter with a calm smile and extended her ID. Captain Ariel Monroe, reporting for Flight 382. Gate agent, a young white woman named Kelly, blinked in confusion, then looked Ariel up and down as if trying to make sense of what she was seeing. She gave a tight, uncomfortable smile. "I'm sorry, this area is for flight crew only." Ariel politely gestured to her uniform and ID badge. "Yes, ma'am. I'm the captain." Kelly scoffed slightly and leaned to look around Ariel as if expecting a man to step up behind her. "Are you sure you're not crew support or one of the attendants?" Ariel's smile faded. She stood firm. "No, I'm the pilot in command." "The captain." Passengers nearby paused and stared. A group of teenagers snickered. An older man whispered, "No way she's flying this plane," while someone else muttered, "Is this for real?" Kelly shook her head. "I need to call up supervisor." Before Ariel could say another word, 2 airport security officers appeared, called in by the gate agent. One of them spoke with that fake calm authority that always made things worse. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to step aside. This isn't the place for passengers." Ariel opened her flight bag and pulled out her FAA-issued pilot license, crew pass, and airline badge, all 100% valid, certified, and logged. She held them out. They didn't even look. Passengers began recording. One woman whispered, "This is messed up," while another man chuckled, "Guess they don't want her flying, can't blame them." The humiliation burned. Her cheeks flushed not with shame but with a deep, controlled fury. Not once did she raise her voice. Not once did she break composure. But inside her, something cracked. This wasn't just about disrespect. This was about erasure. About disbelief. About a system that never expected someone who looked like her to hold the controls. Escorted away in full view of the public after passing every test, earning every hour in the sky, and carrying the lives of thousands over the years, had never felt so small. But what no one knew, not the gate agent, not the security, not the sniggering passengers, was that this moment of public embarrassment would soon become a national wake-up call. Ariel wasn't about to take this sitting down. She was about to ground the entire airline. To understand the strength behind Captain Ariel Monroe's.com response, you need to know the storm she came through. Ariel was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, a city with a complicated past and a proud but painful history. Her childhood wasn't wrapped in luxury. Her father, Reggie Monroe, worked as a car mechanic, often coming home with grease-stained hands and stories of customers who never tipped. Her mother, Darlene, worked night shifts as a nurse at the local hospital. Together they raised 3 children in a 2-bedroom apartment and taught them to dream beyond their zip code. Ariel's dream was simple but bold. She wanted to fly. It started when she was 6. Her family took a trip to visit her grandmother in Chicago, and it was Ariel's first time on a plane. She spent the whole flight staring out the window, her breath fogging the glass, watching clouds roll by like waves in the sky. That day she told her dad, "One day I'm going to fly one of those." He smiled but said, "Just be ready. Dreams like that come with a fight." And fight she did. In high school she joined a local aviation club, the only black girl in the group. She studied at night, worked part-time at a diner on weekends, and saved every penny for flying lessons. Her counselor once suggested she should apply to become a flight attendant instead, claiming it was a more reachable goal. Ariel smiled but kept pushing. She earned a scholarship to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, where the classrooms were filled mostly with white males from affluent backgrounds. While her peers wore brand-name jackets and drove sports cars, Ariel biked to class in the rain, studied at night, and worked at the school library to pay for her flight hours. Some of her instructors doubted her abilities, giving her lower scores than her white classmates even when she outperformed them. Others gave backhanded compliments like, "You're pretty sharp for someone with your background." But Ariel didn't need validation. She needed air under her wings. She passed her FAA written and flight exams with near-perfect scores. While some cadets took extra months to complete their flight hours, Ariel did it ahead of schedule. She was hungry, not for approval but for freedom to break barriers, to rewrite what a pilot should look like. She joined GoldJet Airlines at 25. By 30, She had logged over 8,000 flight hours and earned her captain's badge, a milestone less than 1% of black female pilots in America reach. But even then, it didn't get easier. She was mistaken for a flight attendant dozens of times. A co-pilot once asked her, "Are you here to shadow someone?" TSA agents questioned her license more thoroughly than others, and on more than one occasion, male passengers refused to believe she was in charge of the cockpit. But Ariel stayed professional, always calm, always composed. She believed in earning her seat, not demanding it. But when she was escorted out of the gate like a criminal, after years of hard-earned success, something shifted. This wasn't a one-time incident. This was a system trying to clip her wings. But what that system didn't know was that she had learned how to fly through storms. And this time she wouldn't be flying alone. Ariel didn't go home and cry. She didn't shout. She sat in her car, took a deep breath, and did what trained pilots do when systems fail. She made a plan. Her first call was to Danielle Harper, her longtime friend and now a civil rights attorney in Washington, D.C. Danielle listened quietly, then asked, "You have video proof?" Ariel nodded. "Good, let's take this to the skies." Within 24 hours, Danielle had filed an official complaint with the FAA, the Department of Transportation, and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Ariel submitted every bit of documentation, her flight credentials, her ID, and, most powerfully, the videos recorded by passengers. One clip showed her clearly stating her name and position, while the gate agent scoffed and waved her off. Another showed the security officers escorting her away as a passenger asked, "Wait, she's the pilot." The footage hit social media like lightning. TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram were flooded with hashtags. Hashtag let her fly, hashtag ARIELLE, the captain, hashtag black women can fly, hashtag gold jet. Exposed within hours. The story trended nationwide. People from all backgrounds voiced support. Veteran pilots, celebrities, and aviation organizations began publicly backing Ariel, calling out the racism and misogyny baked into the industry. Meanwhile, Gold Jet's PR department scrambled. Their first statement only made things worse. "We regret the confusion that occurred in our reviewing internal procedures." No mention of her name, no acknowledgement of her title, no apology. That vague, corporate nonsense infuriated the public. Protesters showed up outside GoldJet's headquarters, with signs saying Ariel earned her wings, let her fly, and she's the captain, not the coffee girl. Ariel appeared on Good Morning America, NPR, and even CNN, wearing her full uniform. She calmly explained what happened, how she'd been treated like an intruder at her own job. Her words echoed everywhere. "If I had been a white male pilot, this never would have happened. I was treated like an imposter for simply doing my job." The next day, the FAA announced a full investigation into GoldJet's operational practices. Behind closed doors, chaos erupted. Internal emails were leaked, revealing that GoldJet executives were more worried about public backlash than addressing the systemic problems within the company. More employees came forward, former pilots, current staff, even mechanics, confirming that discrimination and corner cutting weren't new. They just weren't supposed to talk about it. Suddenly, this wasn't just about one gate agent mistreating one pilot. This was about an entire airline culture being dragged into the light. And Ariel, she wasn't hiding. She was leading the charge. As the FAA swept into GoldJet's offices with audit teams and legal staff, the airline executives scrambled, but Ariel's report had already ripped the lid off a much bigger can of worms. What began as a story about humiliation quickly became a story of neglect, danger, and deception. The FAA's investigation revealed shocking internal violations. Several of GoldJet's jets had outdated maintenance logs. Critical parts like engine sensors and cabin pressure regulators hadn't been checked in months, despite being marked inspected. Even worse, some planes were flying with expired part certifications. Employees began leaking documents anonymously to the press. Internal memos revealed that supervisors were ordered to keep flights moving at all costs, even when it meant skipping mandatory safety checks. Ariel also received an encrypted message from a co-pilot she had flown with years ago, now working at a different airline. The message read, "You weren't the first. I was forced to co-sign flights with a pilot who failed simulator retests twice. They buried it. You exposing them may have just saved lives." Ariel was stunned. She had thought this was about bias, but it was bigger. It was about corporate greed risking real lives. Meanwhile, GoldJet continued to take a public beating. Journalists uncovered that several complaints had been filed internally over the past 5 years, including discrimination against female pilots, racial slurs used in cockpit group chats, undocumented crew scheduling violations. But all of those complaints had been buried or lost. The FAA had no choice but to act. Within a week, they grounded 64% of GoldJet's active fleet for immediate compliance audits. Dozens of flights were cancelled or delayed nationwide. Airports flashed red warning lights across GoldJet counters. Passengers were furious, and media crews flooded terminals. And the final blow, investors pulled out. GoldJet's stock plummeted almost overnight. Travel blogs warned against booking with them. And a major corporate client, a government, travel contract worth millions was suspended pending further investigation. For the first time in decades, the entire aviation industry felt shaken. All because one black woman had been told, "You don't belong here." Ariel's face was now everywhere, not in shame, but in power. She became a symbol not just of what was wrong, but of what could be made right when someone refused to stay quiet in interviews. She never bragged. She never gloated. She simply said, "I didn't set out to destroy a company. I set out to protect passengers. I set out to be seen." And now, the whole world was watching. 3 weeks after the incident, the headlines were relentless and GoldJet Airlines was in freefall. The airline's CEO, Charles Brenner, who had once boasted about running a modern airline with traditional values, was forced to resign under public and regulatory pressure. His internal emails showed clear knowledge of discriminatory practices that were never addressed. The board released a statement, "We have failed our employees and the flying public. Changes must be made." But words weren't enough anymore. The gate agent, Kelly, who had laughed at Ariel and refused to check her ID, was terminated, along with 2 supervisors who allowed the misconduct. Several security officers were suspended for mishandling the incident, and then came the bigger moment. In a public hearing streamed live online, the FAA issued one of the largest fines in commercial aviation history, not just for the discrimination, but for endangering passenger lives through falsified safety logs and illegal scheduling practices. But Ariel wasn't just watching from home. She was there, standing tall at the press podium, wearing her captain's uniform. Poised victorious, she was asked if she would ever return to GoldJet. She smiled gently and said, "Why go back to a system I had to break to be heard?" Instead, Ariel used her newfound platform to launch Skyline Rising, a flight school dedicated to training and empowering women and people of color to become pilots. With backing from aviation organizations, private donors, and even celebrities who had followed her story, Skyline Rising opened its doors just 6 months later. The first class had 22 students, 14 of them young black women who had never once imagined becoming pilots, until they saw Ariel. She greeted them on day 1 and said, "The sky doesn't care what you look like, neither should anyone else." Her story was turned into a documentary, aired on Netflix. She gave a TED Talk titled, "Wings They Tried to Clip." Then most importantly, she inspired millions. And then came perhaps the most powerful full-circle moment. 2 years later, Ariel was asked to be the keynote speaker at the International Women in Aviation Conference. She arrived in her uniform, not GoldJet's but her own. As she took the stage, the entire audience rose to their feet in applause. She stood at the podium and said, "I was told I didn't belong, that I couldn't be what I already was, but I refused to shrink. And in that refusal, something beautiful happened, not just for me, but for every girl who needed to see herself at 30,000 feet. Ariel didn't just ground an airline. She lifted a generation."